Hello guys, I am back and today I said I'd be doing my 10 favorite in this game. So first I'm gonna do the individual list as to which ones are my personal favorites and then the top 10 classes. Or should I do the top 10 classes? Okay, top 10 classes. This first, then the other way around. Now, there's so many classes that I know of, at least. But man, it's actually kind of hard for me to choose which ones would be my favorite, based on pretty much everything, including service records. And if I were to say my number 10 pick, it would have to be, well, something German. And for a start, I'll start with the Graf Zepplin. The Graf Zepplin was never constructed. I mean, by the war ends, the base was finished, but the rest, top up, hull upwards, is not done. So, rip her life. But in this game, they illustrate her perfectly. And if you look at the performance, her stats are pretty. Actually, I would say it's just as good as Shokaku's. Just as good. But what makes her pretty special, well, okay, let's not put the skills whatever, is that, actually, to be honest, she's the only project ship on my list that made it to my top 10, even though I just got her not too long ago. About Graf Zepplin, she carries BF 109 Ts, I think. BF 109s, I know that. She carries Junker, the famous Junkers, those dive bombers, which were pretty well known in the western and eastern fronts, because of they're very terrifying. Her armaments are 8, 50, 105, which I would say is pretty heavy defenses. That's for a carrier, because not many carriers could actually arm that large. Oh wait, actually there is. So that is my number 10 on the list, Graf Zepplin. Now, if I were to pick number 9, the rest from 9 onwards are all real. All ships that were constructed. Now, for my number 9, I would say it's another German, the Gneisenau. The Gneisenau is the last of the two Scharhorst class battle cruisers, mounting 9 11-inch cannons and later 6 15-inch. Though it's not impressive as the 11-inch. The class participated until, I would say, 1943. Gneisenau was sunk in the North Atlantic. No wait, somewhere near Norway. Or, I know it's somewhere in the North Atlantic. One of their most famous action was the sinking of the HMS Glorious, because the Glorious was returning from Norway back to the UK, and she was attacked and sunk by the Gneisenau and Scharhorst. Other than that, well, to be honest, at a certain point of the war, maybe 1943 again, they removed one of Gneisenau or Scharhorst's turrets, but it should be Gneisenau's turret, to make it a land cruiser, a land battleship that mounts 2 15-inch cannons, a single mouse cannon, and a crap ton of weapons for light defense. Which I would say, impressive, Germany. Very good engineering. So, for that, her main armaments are 9 11-inch guns. Her secondaries are almost the same as Bismarck. I would say roughly 10 105s. Oh wait, mix of 105 M127s. But if I were to give a rough estimate how many secondaries there are altogether, I would say roughly around 30 to 40 here on the two ships. So, I mean, really, they have an impressive service record. And they really did get the British during the Battle of Norway, being their most famous. So for that reason, based on fear factor, I give them the number 9 spot. Now, for number 8, I think this one arguably has to go to Japan. To be honest, I had some hard time choosing in between them, between the so many classes, though most I have never even got before. But if I were to say, of the ships that I have, I would say the Soryuu class. The Soryuu class, which consists of Soryuu and Hiryu, will make up the second carrier division of the IJN, and, well, they only lasted for 6 months, the end. Not impressive of a service record, I would say. Not too impressive. But they really created fear amongst the Americans in the first 6 months of the war. They really created some fear. Because unlike the Akage and Kaga, these were new generation and aircraft carriers. And they consist roughly around 70 aircraft per carrier, which is about the average size of an American. About the average. As in, when the Pacific War started, the Soryuu and Hiryu were just as large as their American counterparts. Though the Americans have they operated deck-part aircraft, which made them distinct against the Japanese, and that's why they won the Battle of Midway and the Coral Sea in the first place. Because the Japanese never made deck aircraft. But in the game, stats-wise, they're pretty nice. BBCA. Impressive. I would say very impressive. If for a new generation carrier in real life, well, I think their fear factor, unlike the Scharhorst class, I would say is a lot better because, well, they're aircraft carriers. And they really created fear amongst the American fleet in the early stage. So for that reason, they deserve that number 8, that beautiful 8. Now, if I were to pick my number 7, I don't have many British warships, not many. But, I mean, so far, everything has been capital ships, all the big bad boys, the very big ones. But for this pick, I'll pick the Dorsetshire. The Dorsetshire is armed with 8 8-inch cannons and 8 11-inch torpedoes. It should be about there. Now, about her service record, she's most famous for the hunt for the Bismarck. Most famous. This action where she was instructed by the British to torpedo the Bismarck. And so as such, well, she was the only ship that rescued the Bismarck's crew, and the Bismarck's crew became POWs, which means prisoners of war. Now, I don't know much about her service record, but I mean, due to fame, and because she was the last ship to take on the Bismarck, right? And somehow she rescued the German survivors from Bismarck. Well, I think most of her career the war career is just guarding the convoys, as, well, most British ships do that. So, but that action made her very famous for putting Bismarck to rest. And as such, well, technically she avenged the Hood, not the entire British Navy, because, well, most of the British Navy had already left. All the British warships except Dorsetshire. That's why she's my pick for number 7. Now, number 6, I don't know. I don't know much about the British destroyers. I don't know much. But if I were to pick number 6 is the Portland class. The Portland class, well, was constructed in the 1920s. They were the second of the new generation, the second of their heavy cruisers, with the first being the Pensacola. Well, this was... No, wait, actually, I think if I remember correctly, they're developed after the Northampton. Or is it the other way around? I don't know. You guys tell me which came first, Northampton or Portland? Down in the comment section. Anyway, one of the more famous things that they did was, well, the delivery of the A-bomb, humanity's most destructive weapon. 1945, Indianapolis was to take the bomb all the way to Saipan, give it to the Enola Gay, drop it on Hiroshima. Kaboom, end of the war. But in the process, those of you who watch Indianapolis, the movie, well, know what happened to her crew. I feel bad for them. And being in shark-infested waters, I feel bad. And for the Indianapolis. But Portland survived the war. And my guess was either she was bombed by her own country, or she was... how should I say it? Or she was scrapped. So it's either of the two. None of the class survive. I have to see it. I mean, to see the future, because, well, they're 1920s. I mean, late 1920 technology, or maybe even 1930s. So for, well, Indianapolis being famous, I give them the number 6 spot. Now, on halfway up the list, well, I would say would be probably the only destroyer class as that I have on my top 10. And that title obviously belongs to Fletcher. For many reasons, Fletcher is actually one of my favorites. Because, well, okay, let's talk about armaments. They are armed with 10 11-inch torpedoes, 5 5-inch dual purpose. They're also equipped with 40 and 20mm cannons, which makes them very destructive against any air attacks. But what makes them so special is that by war's end, 175 were put into combat, which I say is a ridiculous amount of one class of destroyers. Okay, we talk about... Okay, you have the Clemson class, you got the Wickles. Those two combined, sure, they are enough to overpower the Fletchers, but if we're talking about individually, one whole class versus one whole class, the Fletcher just comes out on top. The reason why is because I looked up on War of Warships. Those of you who don't play the game, please do, because it is cool. Anyway, back to it. Well, the Clemson and Wickles may have more cannons than Fletcher, but Fletcher has better weapon system because, well, she was designed in 1940, and during the Battle of Midway, she was put in trials. And after Midway, they were put into service. The whole 175 by war's end. Which I say, very impressive. And one ship in particular that I really do like would be the Johnston. Though if they could add her in the game, I would definitely make her one of my 10 favorites. Personal favorites. Because, well, those of you who know the Battle of Samar, man, I really like it. Her captain was, I would say, pretty badass. He said that, I intend to go in harm's way, and anyone who doesn't want to get off better get off right now. And that was their motto, is either they fight or harm gets to someone else. So basically, Captain Evans made that statement. And, well, that's basically their motto. Well, for the Fletchers. But I would say that is one of the more famous lines. Actually, it's kind of a famous line to me, at least. So, with all of that aside, the reason why I picked them as my number 5 on the list is because one of their numerous quantity, 2 is because of the Johnston, because, well, she's arguably the most famous one of them all. Arguably one of the more famous of the class. Currently, there are only 4 Fletcher class as preserved, 1 in Greece, the remaining 3 in America. So, because of fame and quantity, and actually, they have one of the best technologies for destroy. They have arguably one of the best. For these 3 reasons, that's why I give them number 5. Now, on to number 4. It's kind of complicating to choose them, based on what I know, but if I were to pick number 4, it'd be the Ark Royal. The Ark Royal, built in 1936, she was Britain's first true purpose-built aircraft carrier from scratch. And throughout her career, well, of course it's guarding convoys again, because most of the British Navy was actually guarding the convoy. Because of the Battle of the Atlantic, they couldn't, put them somewhere else. But what she's most famous for is arguably giving the British Royal Navy the chance to catch up to Bismarck. May 27, she launched a couple of Swordfish torpedo bombers. I would say roughly around 20 torpedo bombers to be exact. Roughly around that many torpedo bombers. She sends them to sink the Bismarck. But of course, we all know she can't be sunk by pretty much anything, because, well, double layer her construction makes her almost purely indestructible. It feels like you're, trying to mine obsidian and in Minecraft, but you can't. Although eventually it broke anyway. Ark Royal sent her torpedo bombers. 3 were hits, 2 did nothing. The last one got her rudder, the Bismarck's rudder, and she was sent turning in circles until the British caught up and then fired on her. Had it not been for the Ark Royal, the British would have never got the Bismarck, and Bismarck would have just slipped away into France. The port of Brest, that's where she was returning to. So, well, I would say lucky Britain. With that, that's why I put her at number 4. Number 3 will be the HMS Illustrious, the Illustrious class carrier. Arguably, the Illustrious class was another purpose-built aircraft carrier after the Ark Royal. But what made them famous is that they were the first to ever make a naval assault with only aircraft alone. Read the Battle of Taranto. The Illustrious was the one who carried out the attack against the Italian fleet in Taranto. And because, well, actually, technically, Illustrious revolutionized aerial warfare and brought the dawn of the aircraft carrier, which of course brought the end to the battleship, which we all know. So, although service record, I would say most of it again is spent in the Atlantic, and sometime a lot later in the war in the Pacific, because, well, Britain is mostly focusing its fleets in the Atlantic because they have to keep their supply chain open so that way they don't die, right, and give up on the war. The Illustrious class never had some of the best weapons, but the aircraft wise, weapons wise, I would say it's pretty heavy. She's armed with 16 long-range anti-aircraft artillery, coupled with quite a lot of defenses. a crap ton of them. But because why I put them on number 3 is because they revolutionized aerial warfare. They really revolutionized the war in the skies and at sea. I mean, the sea warfare, they have revolutionized it. That's why they're my number 2 pick. Now, on to no wait, that was 3. So now is number 2. Number 2, I would say, well, clearly one of my favorites. To be honest, I had quite a hard time. I'm choosing, but if I were to choose, it'd be the Yorktown. The Yorktown class. Arguably one of my big favorites, but sadly they didn't make it to number 1. There is a very, very good reason why. Service record. Once the war started, Yorktown, I mean, all the US Navy carriers were put on high alert. Yorktown was the first carrier to be fitted with the CXAM-1 search radar, which of course provided the advantage for the Americans in the Battle of the Coral Sea and later Midway. His service record, the first of the class was built and launched in 1933. They have, I mean, not the best. Only Enterprise has the best technology for her class. They weighed in 20,000 tons. They have 4-inch belt armor, 1.5-inch deck armor. At the start of the war, they had, of course, the inadequate Chicago pianos. Later changed out with the Beaufort 40mm. The 50 cal machine guns replaced with the 20mm Oerlikons. For Yorktown, the significance for Yorktown was the Battle of the Coral Sea. She was one of 4 carriers that participated. The others being the Lexington, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, along with Shoho, but she's a light carrier, so I don't count. And some more, she was finished off before she could fight. So sad life. That's about Yorktown. Hornet, well, she was actually, she made a significant impact on the war. Her as well, even though she did little damage. What is significant about her was the Doolittle raid. In 1942, because the Americans won payback for Pearl Harbor. So Doolittle is like, you know what? Let's give the Japanese some payback. And to be honest, it is arguably the craziest idea I've ever seen. One of the craziest. Fit Army B-25 bombers on an aircraft carrier. I'd say it's crazy. Army B-25s on a carrier. I mean, the American B-25s weren't meant to launch off an aircraft carrier in the first place. I'd say very crazy. They bombed the Japanese, and in particular Tokyo and its industries, get out, fly to China, and of course that didn't work because they were spotted. So after they were spotted, they launched immediately and then U-turn. So for that, the Doolittle raid, and it made a very huge impact. It really did make an impact because it gave the Japanese fear that this kind of thing might happen again. So for that significance, she's also there. Lastly, of course, the one and only Lucky E. To be honest, she had many nicknames during the conflict, but well, she's arguably the luckiest carrier in the world. Arguably the luckiest. And second to her, in terms of luck, would be of course the Zuikaku. So these two were very good rivals. Anyway, about the Enterprise. Built in 1936. Built and launched in 1936. Well, all the Yorktowns had the same armament. They had pretty much everything the same. But what's significant about her is that she survived the entire 4 years of the war, from start to finish. She survived, and by the time she was out of action, the Americans already won. So about her, I mean, she had contributed a lot to America's final victory. She had contributed a lot. She escorted the Hornet during the Doolittle raid. She took part in America's most decisive victory against the Japanese, the Battle of Midway. She took part in the Battle of Guadalcanal. And to be honest, well, after the Battle of Santa Cruz, she remained as the only operational carrier because Saratoga was still in repairs. You've got the Battle of the Philippine Sea, you've got the Battle of Leyte, you've got, well, the landing of Iwo Jima, and that was it. The end. During the whole conflict, she sank 71 ships. Shot down almost 195 aircraft, which I'd say is amazing for a carrier. So technically she has the highest kill record out of any ship that has seen combat. She has arguably the highest kill record. I mean, for a single ship, she has the highest kill record. And even in today's standards, well, because there's no World War yet, it shouldn't be easy to get 71 kills and over 190 aircraft shot down without being sunk. It's not easy. You need to shoot down that many, especially now is the jet age. So for that, well, their fame, the amount of fear they produced to the enemy was very good. But, well, they're not number one. I wish they could be, but no, they are not number one. Don't get me wrong, but they deserve that number two. Now, for number one, it's really an interesting, not pretty interesting. Okay, we're not talking about any more cruisers, any more battleships. It's just the carriers. For the carriers, my number one pick, well, I think should be kind of obvious. My secondary ship, the Shokaku class. They are my number one pick. Just like the Yorktown class, they almost survived throughout the war. Or they actually produced quite a kill record as well because, well, of their survival from start to finish. Almost from start to finish. They were actually just as large as their American counterparts. They're just as large as the early models of the American carriers, but not as big as the later classes like the Essex. Now, what's significant about the Shokaku class? Well, as I mentioned with Yorktown, they took part in the first carrier battle of the war and, well, I mean the first naval air engagement. So the Yorktowns, the Illustrious, and the Shokakus revolutionized carrier warfare for good. And well, over the war they had some upgrades, though they were limited. After the Battle of Midway, they had radar, which I'd say it's a bit too late. Their aircraft at the start of the war were superb. They were better than the Americans at the start, but of course later the Americans came up with newer and heavier models like the F-4U Corsair, the Grumman Hellcats, which were better than the Zero. But, well, at the start of the war, well, they didn't make much of an impact. It's later that they made quite an impact, though that was too late. Too late for the war. What I'd say is they made a significant impact on the later stage, because of Shokaku. Actually, it feels like the number 2 and the number 1 should have been reversed, but no. I just like it this way. But next time it may change. So, service record. Well, Shokaku has been known for, well, taking the hits. So technically, if you read her, what was it, biography, she's technically a punching bag. technically. I just feel bad for her. I really feel bad. Because she's technically the punching bag of the IJN. Because every time that the planes were supposed to go to Zuikaku, instead flies to Shokaku. The Coral Sea. Boom. That's what happened. Battle of Saipan. There it goes again. Because she was torpedoed by submarines. Battle of Santa Cruz. Pretty much again. And she took the damage. So whatever damage that was supposed to fly to Shokaku, Zuikaku flies to Shokaku, not the other way around. Which I must say, pretty unlucky Shokaku, but you're actually one of my favorites because of that. I feel bad. Anyway, for Zuikaku on the other hand, well, she was technically Japan's luckiest carrier, arguably the luckiest. Though, like I said, with Enterprise, Zuikaku's luck is only second to that. And, well, because Enterprise survived the war, Zuikaku didn't. But she saw the final, the second final naval combat out of the war, which was the Battle of Leyte. What her significance was that she drew away Halsey's Third Fleet up north, so that Kurita's center force can just clear into the Battle of Samar, which I'd say is quite a significance. The weapons, well, weren't the best, but it's because of how they, well, managed to turn the table. I mean, because during the Battle of Leyte, the Japanese thought they turned the tables against the Americans, but because of silly Kurita, if he thought that wasn't the American Third Fleet that was guarding the transports, he would have crushed the Americans. The Americans are forced to surrender, and America would try it again another time, because, well, America had so many ships by the time of 1944. So many ships, so many classes, so many upgrades to their older models. So either way, Japan would have delayed the invasion of Iwo Jima and Okinawa by maybe a few months, or even days. So technically, well, because of City Kurita, the significance wasn't recognized as by Zuikaku, but to me it is recognized, because, I mean, Japan's defeat was of course inevitable, but at least they delay if the Japanese center force of course destroyed what's left, which was 7th Fleet guarding it. Most of 7th Fleet was in the Battle of Surigao Strait. Most of 7th Fleet, which contains all their old battleships and pretty much most of their carrier escort carriers. So that's why I say that they made such a significant impact later rather than early, because, well, early on, Battle of the Coral Sea, KO. If, well, Yamamoto hadn't gambled 2 of his carriers to fight the other 2 American carriers, he would have won the Battle of Midway. He would have, but of course that did not happen at all. So, because of the IJN High Command, Naval High Command, being a gambler, gambling 2 of his carriers to the operation, he technically lost the edge over the Americans. But, well, I would say overall they're very impressive, although they did not have quite the record or significance as the American Yorktowns, but personally they're both my favorites, no matter what. Not because of what they've been through. And to be honest, after the destruction of their senpais, Kaga, Akagi, Soryuu, and Hiryu, they became the last elites of the entire IGN. So they really did make that significance, but due to low carrier quantity, they can't make the difference. Is that, guys? That is my top 10 classes that I decided that make my top 10. If you guys want to see, well, my top 10 individuals, go to the the content section below. You'll be able to find a link to it. But if you guys want to see classes that should be on this list, let me know. Maybe I'll include them next time. And to be honest, this is my first time doing it, so I might be an amateur. With that, guys, I will see you later. And to be honest, this is actually pretty long. With that, guys, well, please do watch my top 10 individual. With that, guys, I will see you all later. Bye bye.